Applying the balance of probabilities is the definitive analytical step in a workplace investigation. It is the standard by which a fact finder determines whether an allegation is substantiated. Unlike the criminal standard of beyond a reasonable doubt, this civil standard focuses on relative likelihood on deciding which version of events is more probable based on the evidence gathered. In workplace investigations, we use the preponderance of the evidence, or balance of probabilities, as the threshold for decision-making. You will often hear this described as the 50% plus a feather test. The standard is met if, after weighing all of the evidence, you find it more likely than not that the alleged conduct occurred. Some describe this as a 51% threshold. Importantly, the Supreme Court of Canada has confirmed that this standard does not change, regardless of how serious the allegation is or how severe the potential sanction may be, including termination. You may feel more pressure in high-stakes cases, but the legal threshold remains exactly the same. As long as an employer can show that it conducted an adequate investigation and reached a reasoned, good-faith conclusion, it is generally protected even if that conclusion is later proven incorrect. A critical principle of investigative integrity is that we weigh evidence. We do not simply count witnesses. The quality and reliability of evidence matter more than the number of people who speak. One way to visualize this is the grains of sand analogy. Think of each piece of evidence as a grain of sand on a scale. 5 small grains of circumstantial evidence can be more than enough to tip the scales than one large but unreliable eyewitness account. In the same way, if an incident occurred in a room of 12 people, you do not automatically need to interview all 12. If 2 or 3 independent witnesses provide consistent, corroborated accounts, you may already have sufficient evidence to reach a finding. Evidence is also weighted according to its reliability. Admissions are the strongest form of proof, followed by direct evidence such as eyewitness testimony or video. Circumstantial evidence and hearsay are usually given less weight, but they can still contribute meaningfully to the overall picture. The balance of probabilities is about relative likelihood, not absolute certainty. It is a system for advancing knowledge by judging probability. The reasonable person standard asks, what is most likely to have happened? Your task as an investigator is to decide whether the evidence is sufficient to incline a fair and impartial mind to one side of the issue rather than the other. In both science and investigation, we live in a world of probabilities. One hypothesis simply appears more correct than another at a given moment, based on the available evidence. Absolute certainty is rare. That is why findings are often expressed as subjective probabilities grounded in the strength of belief in the evidence. If, after careful analysis, the evidence remains deadlocked and you cannot determine with a reasonable degree of certainty what occurred, the finding must be unsubstantiated or inconclusive. Accepting 2 versions of events as equally true and simply leaving them there is considered a denial of justice. You must either reach a reasoned conclusion or formally record that the evidence does not allow one. To make your findings defensible, you must explain why one conclusion is more probable than another. It is not enough to say that an allegation is substantiated. You must articulate the reasoning path, the why behind preferring one narrative over another. This means justifying why you believed witness A over respondent B, or vice versa. Your rationale will often refer to inherent plausibility. Does the story harmonize with what a practical, informed person would recognize as reasonable in that specific environment? You will look at internal and external consistency. Is the account consistent with the witness's prior statements and with hard digital artifacts such as badge logs or email timestamps? You will also consider motive to falsify. Does any party have a clear incentive to lie, such as a respondent trying to avoid termination or a witness seeking a pound of flesh? When you write your findings, use definitive, evidence-based language. For example, the facts support a finding that, on the balance of probabilities, the alleged conduct occurred. This signals that your conclusion is the product of rational analysis, not a gut feeling. As a final check, apply what we might call the globe and mail test. Ask yourself, if my reasoning for preferring this conclusion were published in a major newspaper tomorrow, would it be legal, moral, ethical, and defensible? If the answer is yes, then you have likely applied the balance of probabilities in a sound and professional manner.